My name is Lucy Cox. I was 38 years old when I realized my family didn't just favor my older brother. They felt entitled to take what I built and call it family. I wish I could tell you this started with something dramatic, a fight in the street, police lights, a courtroom. But it didn't. It started the way betrayal usually does, quietly, with a dinner invitation that sounded harmless enough, with my mother's too sweet voice on the phone. "Your dad and I want to come by," she said. "See the house properly. Celebrate you." Celebrate me. That should have been my first warning. My parents didn't celebrate me. Not really. They praised my brother like he invented oxygen and treated my accomplishments like chores I completed without bothering them. Growing up, the dynamic in our house wasn't subtle. It was practically a rule carved into the walls. My older brother Ethan was the golden child. Firstborn, future patriarch, the one who could do no wrong. If Ethan forgot his homework, the teacher was too strict. If he mouthed off, he was assertive. If he broke something, it was an accident. If I did any of those things, I was selfish, disrespectful, dramatic, a problem. My parents didn't even pretend it was equal. They would talk about Ethan inheriting the family home right in front of me, like I was a distant cousin visiting for the holidays. "Ethan will carry the family name," my father would say, puffing up like he was announcing royalty. "And Lucy," my mom would add, smiling like it was a compliment. "She's independent. She doesn't need as much." Independent. That word followed me like a shadow. It wasn't praise. It was a way to justify neglect. Ethan got the bigger bedroom. Ethan got a car on his 16th birthday, bought with cash like it was nothing. Ethan went to college with everything paid for, tuition, housing, even spending money tucked into birthday cards. I got student loans and a part-time job. I got, "You'll appreciate it more this way." I learned early that if I wanted anything, I had to earn it twice. Once for the money, and once for permission to exist without being criticized. By adulthood, the favoritism was no longer a childhood wound. It was a lifestyle. When Ethan married his wife, Lauren, my parents gifted them $30,000 for a down payment. They threw a party about it, champagne, speeches, pictures posted online like they'd accomplished something heroic. 4 years later, when I asked if they could help me the same way, my father leaned back in his chair and gave me a lecture about fiscal responsibility. "You can't rely on other people, Lucy," he said, as if he hadn't just written a check big enough to change Ethan's life. So I didn't rely on anyone. I worked hard. The kind of work that leaves your shoulders permanently tight and your mind buzzing at 2 a.m. I stayed late. I took certifications at night. I picked up extra projects on weekends. 15 years of 60-hour weeks and aggressive saving. I skipped vacations. I skipped brunches. I skipped anything that wasn't necessary because I was determined to build something that couldn't be taken from me. And when I finally bought my house, it felt like I'd stepped into a life I'd only seen through other people's windows. 3 bedrooms in a neighborhood I actually liked. The place needed work, but I didn't mind. I wanted to pour myself into it. I refinished the hardwood floors until they gleamed like honey. I renovated the kitchen. I converted the garage into a home gym. Every corner of that house became proof of something I'd never been allowed to feel. Pride. My name was on the deed. My money paid for it. My rules lived inside it. For the first time in my life, I felt safe. That's what made what happened next feel so surreal, like someone reaching into your chest and twisting. 2 months after I moved in, my parents came over for dinner. My boyfriend Caleb had offered to stay, but I told him it was fine. I wanted, stupidly, to believe my parents could see what I'd built and be proud of me for once. They arrived with that fake energy they always carried when they wanted something. My mother complimented the curtains. My father walked through the house like he was inspecting a construction site. He said, tapping a wall with his knuckle. "You did this yourself?" "I hired a contractor," I replied, "and I did some of the finish work." He made a face like I'd admitted to a crime. "Well, looks decent. My mother drifted behind him, scanning rooms like she was mentally rearranging furniture. She paused at the staircase and sighed dramatically. "It's a lot of house for one person," she said. I forced a smile. "It's what I wanted." "And do you feel lonely?" she pressed. Like loneliness was a flaw she could use against me. I didn't answer. I served dinner. I laughed when they laughed. I swallowed the familiar feeling that I was being evaluated instead of appreciated. After we ate, my parents sat at my dining table with those serious expressions I remembered from childhood talks. The kind where I was told to apologize even when I hadn't done anything. My father folded his hands. "Lucy," he began, "your mother and I have been discussing your house situation." My stomach tightened immediately. Something about the word situation made my skin prickle. "My situation?" I repeated. My mother leaned forward, voice gentle like she was offering medicine. "We think it would make more sense for Ethan to take over this property." I stared at her. I truly stared, waiting for her to laugh, to say she was kidding, to admit she'd said something insane. But she didn't. "Excuse me?" My voice came out thin. "Lucy, don't get worked up," my father said. "This is about family assets. Ethan has kids who need space. You're single," my mother finished quickly, like it was a diagnosis. "It's the practical solution." I felt heat rise up my neck. "This is my house," I said slowly, like I was explaining something to a child. "I bought it with my money." My father leaned forward, using that intimidation posture that used to scare me when I was 10. "We're not trying to take it from you. We're trying to manage what's best for the family." "Best for the family," I repeated, tasting how rotten it sounded. "Ethan would let you stay here until you find something smaller," my mom added, smiling like that was generous. I opened my mouth to respond, and then I heard footsteps. Someone had been in my kitchen. A shadow crossed the doorway, and my stomach dropped before I even saw him. Ethan walked in. He had that same smug smile he'd worn since we were kids. The one that said he could take my toys because Mom would make me share. "Don't take it personally," he said, like he was comforting me. "It's just what makes sense for the family. You don't really need all this space." My hands clenched into fists under the table. In that moment, the house around me didn't feel like safety anymore. It felt like something they were already dividing up. I pushed back my chair and stood. "This conversation is over," I said, voice low. "I'm not signing anything. Not to you, not to anyone. This is my home." The temperature in the room dropped, like someone opened a freezer. My parents exchanged that look, the one that meant I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do. My mother's smile cracked. My father's jaw tightened. Ethan's face darkened, like he wasn't used to hearing the word no. They left shortly after, dinner ruined, as if my refusal was the offense. When the door shut behind them, the silence in my house felt too loud. I walked through the rooms I'd worked so hard for, touching counters, door frames, the banister, like I needed to remind myself the house was real. At midnight, alone in my kitchen, I actually laughed out loud. Not because it was funny, because it was so absurd it barely made sense. What kind of family demands you hand over the one thing you built for yourself? I didn't know it yet, but that night wasn't the end of the conversation. It was the beginning of a war I never wanted, with the people who were supposed to love me most. If I'd known that night was only the opening move, I might have slept less peacefully. For about 48 hours after my parents left, everything went quiet. No calls, no texts, no passive-aggressive checking in. That silence felt wrong. By the third morning, my phone started buzzing like it had developed a conscience. First, it was my mom. "We're just worried about you. Families shouldn't fight over material things. Ethan's kids deserve stability." I didn't reply. Then my dad called. I let it ring out. He left a voicemail anyway, his voice heavy with that disappointed father tone I'd grown up fearing. "You're being unreasonable, Lucy. Think about the bigger picture." The bigger picture, apparently, was a life where anything I owned automatically became community property, as long as Ethan wanted it. By the end of the week, the guilt trips had evolved into something else entirely. Entitlement. It started with a knock on my door Saturday morning. I opened it to find Ethan and Lauren standing there with coffee cups, like they were dropping by a friend's place. "Hey sis," Ethan said cheerfully. "We were in the area." My stomach sank. "You should have called." Lauren smiled too wide. "We didn't want to bother you." They stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. Lauren immediately started looking around, eyes flicking from wall to wall. "You know," she said, tapping my living room wall, "this could really open up if you took this down." I stared at her. "This isn't your house." She laughed lightly. "Of course not. Just thinking ahead." Ethan nodded like this was already settled. "We'd probably redo the kitchen too. Kids need space." I stood there frozen, feeling like I'd walked into my own home and found strangers mentally redecorating it. "I told you already," I said. "This isn't happening." They nodded, smiled, the same way adults smile at a toddler throwing a fit. "We understand you're attached," Lauren said. "Change is hard." After they left, I called my boyfriend Caleb. "This is getting weird," I told him. "Weird?" he said. "Lucy, this is straight up invasive." Caleb had been around long enough to see the favoritism, but even he seemed shocked by how bold they were being. "Change the locks," he said, "and stop explaining yourself." I should have listened sooner. The next time they showed up, they didn't knock. I came home from the grocery store to find Ethan's SUV in my driveway. My heart started pounding before I even reached the door. They'd used the spare key. Lauren was in my kitchen, rearranging my counter like she owned it. Ethan's kids were running through the house, shoes on, bouncing off furniture. "Hey," Ethan said casually, "you left a key outside, not very secure." I felt something snap inside my chest. "Get out." My voice was shaking. Lauren frowned. "Lucy, they're just kids." One of them bumped into my coffee table, knocking over a framed photo. The glass cracked. "Kids will be kids," Ethan said, shrugging. I marched to the door, grabbed the spare key from under the rock, and held it up. "You are never using this again." They left annoyed, like I was the problem. That afternoon, Caleb came over and helped me change the locks. "This isn't family behavior," he said, tightening a bolt. "This is people testing how far they can go." That's when I installed security cameras. Front door, back door, driveway. I hated that it came to that, but I hated feeling unsafe in my own house more. For a while, the cameras were quiet. Then came the texts. "You're tearing the family apart. Your brother would never treat you this way. You're being selfish." My aunt chimed in. Then a cousin. Everyone had opinions. No one offered to tell Ethan to back off. The worst part? Ethan started showing up when I wasn't home. I'd get motion alerts while I was at work, his SUV creeping into my driveway, him pacing around like he was measuring. Lauren would point at windows, at the garage, at the backyard, planning. The first time I confronted them, Ethan laughed. "You're paranoid," he said. "Relax." But the cameras didn't lie, and neither did the night everything crossed a line I couldn't ignore. Besides the house, the one thing I truly loved was my 1969 Dodge Dart, metallic green, original engine. I'd spent 2 years restoring it, every spare weekend, every extra dollar. It was more than a car. It was proof that I could build something beautiful from scratch. I heard the sound from inside the house, a scraping noise, slow, deliberate. I looked out the window and felt my blood turn to ice. Ethan's 10-year-old son was dragging a rock along the side of my car, carving a deep white line through the paint. I ran outside. "What are you doing?" I shouted. He looked at me and smiled. "It's just an old car," he said, dragging the rock harder. I snapped. I yanked the rock from his hand and threw it into the yard. I shoved him back, not hard, but enough that he fell. "Get away from my car!" He screamed like I'd assaulted him. Ethan and Lauren rushed out, followed by my parents, who had apparently been inside my house the whole time. "What is wrong with you?" Lauren shrieked, grabbing her son. "He just caused thousands of dollars in damage," I said, pointing at the gouge running down the car. "It's just a car," Ethan said dismissively. My dad put a hand on my shoulder. "Lucy, calm down. You're overreacting." I shrugged him off. That was it. That was the moment I understood something clearly. No matter what they did, no matter how far they went, I would always be wrong for defending myself. Not one of them acknowledged the damage. Not one of them offered to pay. They lectured me instead about anger, about priorities, about family. When they finally left, I stood alone in my driveway, tracing the scratch with my fingers. 2 years of work destroyed in seconds. And somehow, I was still the villain. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I opened a folder on my laptop and started documenting everything. Texts, dates, times, footage. Because whatever this was turning into, I wasn't going to face it unprepared. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the white scar running down the side of my car. I heard the scraping sound again, slow, intentional, like someone carving their name into something they didn't own. By morning, the anger had hardened into something colder. Resolve. At exactly 9 a.m., I called Ethan. I want $3,500 for the damage to my car, I said, keeping my voice flat. That's the minimum for professional restoration. There was a pause on the line. Then he laughed. You're joking. I'm not. It's a scratch, Lucy. Buff it out. You have security footage of your son doing it on purpose, I replied. Either you pay or I file a police report for vandalism and submit an insurance claim naming him. He's a minor, Ethan scoffed. Nothing will happen. As his parent, you're legally responsible, I said, and I have documentation. Another pause, shorter this time. I'll give you $500, he said. That's generous. No, I replied. You have until the end of the day. He hung up on me. 3 hours later, I walked into the police station with a flash drive, printed photos, timestamps, and screenshots of texts where Ethan dismissed the damage. The officer listened patiently, skeptical at first, until I showed him the footage. Family disputes get ugly, he said, but property damage is still property damage. By the time I left, a report had been filed. That was the moment my family stopped pretending this was about what's best and started treating me like a traitor. The group chat went silent, for me. Holiday plans appeared without my name attached. Conversations ended abruptly when I walked into rooms. I heard through cousins that my parents were telling people I was unstable, obsessed with money, not in a good place mentally. Ethan, meanwhile, didn't bother being subtle anymore. You're making a huge mistake, he texted one night. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. I didn't respond. I just saved it. The vandalism started soon after. My mailbox was smashed. Someone trampled my garden. Eggs splattered across my front door. Twice. Once, I came home to find my security camera tilted upward, deliberately pointed at the sky. I filed reports. Every time. By the third visit, the officers recognized me. Look, one of them said quietly, pulling me aside. We don't have the resources to prioritize things like this unless we catch someone in the act. So I'm just supposed to let it happen? I asked. He shook his head. Document everything, upgrade your security, and consider civil options. Restraining orders, lawsuits, words I never thought I'd associate with my own family. I upgraded the cameras the next day, mounted them higher, added backup batteries, motion alerts tied directly to my phone. I installed a steel mailbox embedded in concrete. I stopped pretending this would blow over. One evening, I came home to find Ethan's kids riding bikes across my lawn, tearing deep grooves into grass I'd just had reseeded. Lauren sat in her SUV across the street, scrolling on her phone. I walked straight up to her window. Get your kids off my property, I said. She didn't even look up. They're just playing. This is trespassing. She rolled her eyes. God, Lucy, you're so dramatic. This is why everyone thinks you're unstable. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Something changed immediately. Lauren snapped her fingers, calling the kids back with fake sweetness. As they rode away, she leaned toward me. You're going to regret this, she said softly. That night, I called Caleb and told him everything. This isn't normal, I said, even for my family. No, he agreed. This feels desperate. That word stuck with me. Desperate. Ethan had always been entitled, but this was frantic, like someone drowning and grabbing anything nearby. I started paying closer attention. His social media told a different story than his confidence did. A vacation they'd been bragging about disappeared without explanation. His oldest kid transferred from private school to public halfway through the year. Lauren stopped posting about her job at the real estate firm. Something wasn't adding up. Then my bank called. "We're verifying information on a refinance application tied to your property," the woman said. "I didn't apply for anything," I replied. "There's an application listing your home as secondary collateral." My stomach dropped. "That's impossible. I'm the sole owner." "That's why it was flagged," she said. "The application was submitted by your parents." I felt sick. After I hung up, I called Caleb. Then I called my friend Marissa, whose cousin worked at the county records office. 2 days later, Marissa showed up at my house with a folder. What I saw inside changed everything. My parents' home had been refinanced 3 times in the last decade. Every refinance lined up with one of Ethan's business ventures. All of them had failed. Quietly. A construction startup, a real estate investment group, a sports bar that lasted less than a year. Each failure had been hidden, covered by my parents taking out more equity. They were now 6 months behind on payments. Foreclosure proceedings had already begun. But that wasn't the worst part. They had tried to create a fake family trust, backdated and notarized, listing my house as part of their assets. My signature, sloppily forged, appeared as a trustee. Lauren's signature was on the documents as a witness. They hadn't just pressured me. They had tried to steal my house without telling me. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the papers, hands shaking. Every guilt trip, every unannounced visit, every threat. It wasn't about family. It was about survival. The next morning, I contacted a lawyer who specialized in real estate fraud. She reviewed everything carefully. "This is attempted loan fraud," she said. "Forgery, identity theft. We have options." "What happens if I press charges?" I asked. "They could face serious consequences," she replied. "Jail time isn't impossible." I thought about my parents, their faces, their voices. Then I thought about my house, my car, my sanity. "Prepare everything," I said, "but don't file yet. I wanted one thing first, the truth, out in the open, because whatever happened next, they weren't controlling the narrative anymore." Ethan showed up 3 days later. I knew before he even reached the porch. My phone buzzed, motion detected, front camera. I opened the door before he could knock. "Bold move," I said calmly, "considering I already have police reports with your name on them." He blinked, clearly not expecting that. "We need to talk." "No," I replied. "You want to talk. I don't." He tried to step past me. I blocked the doorway. "This isn't family business anymore," I said. "Everything goes through my lawyer." His face tightened. "You hired a lawyer? Jesus, Lucy, you're blowing this out of proportion." I smiled for the first time since this whole nightmare started. "You tried to use my house as collateral without my consent," I said. "That's fraud. You forged my signature." For the first time, I saw fear flicker across his face. "That was paperwork," he muttered. "Dad handled that." "I have copies," I said, "and the bank has questions." He backed away without another word. That afternoon, my lawyer sent formal cease and desist letters to my parents, Ethan, Lauren, and my aunt who'd been calling to mediate. The letters were detailed, cold, clinical, every incident listed, every piece of evidence referenced. The response was immediate. My mother called, crying. "We never meant to hurt you," she sobbed. "This has gone too far." My father emailed me instead. Long paragraphs about disrespect, family loyalty, and how disappointed he was that I'd involved outsiders. Not one of them denied the fraud. 2 days later, I got a group text. "Family meeting, Sunday, 2 p.m. Attendance expected." I spent the next 4 days organizing my evidence into a binder so thick it barely closed. Tabs, dates, screenshots, loan records, camera footage stills, police reports. Caleb asked if I wanted him there. "I don't need backup," I said. "I need witnesses." When I arrived at my parents' house, everyone was already there. My parents, Ethan and Lauren, their kids, my aunt, 2 cousins who'd clearly been invited to apply pressure. My father started talking immediately about unity, about mistakes, about how families survive by forgiving. My mother cried again. I let them finish. Then I placed the binder on the table. I know about the mortgages, I said. I know about the foreclosure. I know about the forged trust and the loan application using my house. The room went silent. Ethan went pale. My mother's crying stopped mid-sob. My father opened his mouth. Lucy, this is a misunderstanding. No, I cut in. This is documented fraud. Ethan stood up, pointing at me. You ungrateful! Sit down, I said, not raising my voice. I'm not done. That's when the door opened. My Uncle Mark walked in. I'm late, he said, then looked straight at Ethan. But I thought this conversation needed to happen with everyone present. Ethan's eyes widened. Mark turned to the room. I've loaned Ethan over $80,000 in the last 4 years. Money he promised to repay. Money I now know went nowhere. My father tried to interrupt. Mark raised his voice. You've covered for him long enough. He's been bleeding this family dry. The room erupted. Lauren started crying. My aunt gasped. My mother looked like she was about to faint. I stood. You have 2 options, I said. Option 1, I press charges. The bank investigates. The house goes into foreclosure. Criminal charges follow. I paused. Option 2, you leave me alone. Permanently. No contact, no visits, no manipulation. My house stays mine. My mother whispered, You can't cut off your family. Watch me, I said. I walked out before anyone could respond. As I reached my car, my father called after me. Lucy, please, we can work this out. I turned back one last time. You had years, I said. You chose Ethan every time. This time, I chose myself. They chose silence. That was their answer. The next morning, my mother texted, We agree to your terms. No apology, no accountability. Just surrender wrapped in politeness. I didn't reply. Instead, I called my lawyer and told her to file everything. The restraining order went through first. 500 feet. No contact. No excuses. The civil case followed. The judgment for my car damage arrived in the mail weeks later. $3,500 plus fees. Ethan never paid it willingly. It was garnished. My parents' house went into foreclosure quietly. No dramatic announcement, just a listing on a county website and a realtor's sign I saw once while driving past. Ethan's last business collapsed. Lauren lost her job. They moved in with her parents. 9 months later, Ethan showed up at my office. Security stopped him before he reached me. 5 minutes, he pleaded. They're going to lose everything. I looked at him through the glass. I walked away. Life got calm after that. I finished my renovations. I got promoted. I learned what peace felt like. Sometimes Caleb and I sit on the back porch in the evenings, watching the sun drop behind the house I earned. That house was never about property. It was about proof. Proof that I could build something without permission. Proof that love without respect isn't love. Proof that family isn't blood, it's behavior. And the people who tried to take my life apart, they were never family.